welcome to the November's IPVM working group call. We have a lot of updates on our side, and obviously we have a lot of the team here today, including Hugo, who's done a lot of great work. I'll talk about that, and Brian, and of course Brooke. So obviously this is a more general call, but I'll give some updates on our end first, so that we have it on video. And a lot of work and the kind of work that's upcoming in this sprint that we're on. So the first things first, I guess, is we did our first IPVM workshop in Turkey, in Istanbul, which went over really well. I was not at the workshop. I think none of the people from Fission here were actually at the workshop, but there were Fission people at the workshop, and they'll probably come on. Maybe we'll get them to do a video or something to kind of talk about how it went. And as we were saying just before, any official setting for this meeting, maybe we'll try to do do a condensed version of the workshop as a video that we can share for people. They can run through it themselves. Thanks for putting up the repo there too, Brian. Thank you. So kind of in accordance with this workshop, it brings about a few things kind of happening in the IPVM ecosystem that we've been kind of forging down, which is with Homestar. We've been building a lot of pieces there around our networking with the P2P. Brian's done extensive work, mainly really testing that all the networking pieces work, and we have a really cool multi-node testing setup. And in accordance with Homestar and how we worked on the workshop, we started working on the kind of general everything computer. And maybe we'll link that to Brian. Everything computer work, which is kind of the entire kind of worldview that we've been thinking about at Fission, which is how to interoperate with an IPVM implementation like Homestar, and what does it look like to actually work with workflows, generate workflows. And so on that end, what we've been calling the kind of everything, everywhere computer control panel, which I don't know if it's officially open or not. I think it is, but nonetheless, the control panel has been work that Andy and Hugo have been working on extensively, which is actually like a front-end interface to how to actually build workflows. So I think in putting this all together, it's that IPVM is a specification that we've implemented that can run workflows, share receipts, share compute over the network, and everywhere computer. And this control panel is essentially a way to interact with that and build out workflows, and also do things like compile WASM in the front end as well, which is something that Yuko's been working on extensively, because the idea is that we can really run WASM from anywhere, because write once, run everywhere is the dream. So I don't know, Brooke, if you want to talk a little bit about the kind of larger and just kind of larger view on this stuff, and then we can talk through some of the pieces, but maybe you wanted to say a little bit about that.
No, I mean, I think that's a pretty great overview overall. There's obviously a lot of different terms that get thrown around at this stage, right? So IPVM is the protocol. It has specs. Anyone can implement it. Homestar is the reference implementation of a node in Rust, and then everywhere computer is more like a brand and things that'll live on websites and places where you can actually go and click around on stuff. So they're all all of it is IPVM. It's just different implementations and different parts that consume it, basically. The team that went to Istanbul, so there was IPFS Connect last week. We ran a 2-hour workshop there for IPVM. Really great feedback, both on the sides of people were excited by what they saw, and getting feedback from people that are like, oh, this part's confusing, or oh, I really wish I did this. So we were sitting there taking lots of notes. The people that were there were sitting there taking lots of notes. So that's really great. And that team is mainly in the air right now, flying back. And so we'll get a little bit more feedback from them when they're all settled again. But yeah, those are the main updates.
Yep. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, we're working on the interface of this, right? Like if people have looked at the IPVM spec or looked at Homestar as kind of this, back-end implementation of it all. How do people actually use this? It's like a big question. And that's where, that's which is important, right? At the end of the day, people have to use it to make it worthwhile. And so that's been the great work that Hugo and Andy have been doing. And maybe one of the things we could talk about there, I mean, obviously we're kind of diving back into a lot of the kind of WASM with stuff. Hugo's been working on essentially interpreting between JavaScript and WIT, so that we can actually have like, oh, I have this WASM module. What are its functions? What are the types of these functions? And we've been going back and forth on that. Hugo, I don't know if you want to talk about a lot of your WASM experiments and stuff. I think they've been really great.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm trying to. So there's already a couple of tools from the what's the name? Bytecode Alliance, I think.
Yeah, WASM, aka Fastly, but Bytecode Alliance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the main one is the componentized.js, which kind of does a bunch of work already. The thing is, the inputs for that tool are JS code and WIT. So for the normal user, the JS part is kind of easy, comes with the territory. The WIT part is the hard part. So I'm trying to build up an interpreter that can take the TypeScript types and build up the WIT world, and kind of have a small tool that wraps all of it. So it bundles the JS code, figures out the exports, figures out the types, builds up the WIT world, and outputs a WAS that you can straight up put on IPFS and kind of include it in a workflow that Homestar can run. There's several challenges in there. The biggest one is going to be to build up all of the web APIs. So things that are not like JavaScript are just like generic standards of APIs used in browsers, in Node.js, in Cloudflare workers, in all of the JavaScript engines. All of the JS code expects those globals to be there. And right now we only have like a couple of them. We can pretty easily fully fill most of them. The difficult part is going to be when we go into the IO bits, where like the fetch implementation or the file system implementation and all of that, that's going to take a lot more work. And right now we already kind of handle the basic types, like the primitive types. We can bundle NPM dependencies. We can output the WASM that can. The last one that I did is gonna build up an hash, SHA-2 or SHA-3 of something, and it works. Homestar outputs what it needs to output. So we're gonna build up and start supporting more stuff from there.
And this really gets into a whole end-to-end where we can support WIT on the front end, JavaScript, and we can support it with IPLD, with the digital underlying structure of Homestar, and it's kind of an end-to-end of all these data types translating to each other, which is pretty cool. And to Hugo's point, I think a lot of the work that we're working on the WASM side is around WASI. We're going to be doing that for Homestar as well. And looking essentially how to start kind of plugging in WASI for doing host specific stuff that we need. Again, working with sockets, working with the file system. That'll be a pretty big chunk of work. Brian and I have talked about as well on the Homestar side, probably going into Christmas in January. Yeah. Well, thank you, guys. Awesome. Hugo also has great videos. Maybe we can start sharing some of those out to this group, at least around on the public side of the Discord. I think that'd be really great. Brian, do you want to talk a little bit about your work that you've been doing in testing and messages and all that stuff that actually, a big part of the control panel is you also get essentially all the messages coming through on the network, or important messages coming through on the network for running a Homestar node. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, sure. So part of preparing a control panel, which we mentioned earlier, was figuring out how were we going to get information to control panel about what's happening on your Homestar node. This includes information about receipts that are being computed when you're running a workflow. It's probably sort of the most core piece. It includes some metrics about the node. What's its CPU level, what's system load, sort of things you'd want to see about the health of your node. And what was the other piece, Zishan, that we're sending? Oh, messages about the network, of course.
Yeah.
So, so when you've made a connection with another peer, or when your connection with another peer has been closed, when a peer gossips a receipt to you, so that you have some piece of computation that you may not need to run if you end up, running a workflow that uses that receipt. And so Zishan and I set up a JSON RPC API that will send these messages over to control panel. And Ugo and Andy worked on integrating that into control panel and getting all the messages across. And so, so now, Homestar has a really great JSON RPC API with subscriptions. Each time you run a workflow, you get a subscription to its receipts. Each time that you can subscribe to network events, and you'll get a bunch of network events about things that are going on when your node communicates with others. And those were sort of the main pieces of what we did in terms of in terms of testing. We're testing all of these notifications, and sort of the network ones in multi-node tests where we run up 2 nodes and we make sure that we get connection messages across the subscription. Our tests are starting to get a little bit elaborate and are starting to take a long time to run, as expected from this kind of testing. And one other thing I'll add that's sort of a slightly different topic. In preparation for the workshop, we wrote up an initial version of documentation for Homestar. So I'm going to drop a link in here. This is our getting started guide, and right below there are the starts for a configuration guide. So if you want to play with this stuff, probably take a look at the workshop, and because it has a little bit of sort of meta information. But then this documentation will have a little bit more detail, and then of course reach out to us if you have any questions.
Yeah, we have I think there's an open sign up for beta or alpha beta. I don't think I'm like that. That'd be great. And yeah, I mean, things are still in flux, still changing, but we're kind of getting to the first releases of all this. So actually, that's the next step, kind of for through December here. We're going to start breaking out a couple different libraries on Homestar around invocations versus workflows. We're setting up our official kind of release train for 0.10 around Homestar, and that will tie in with all the JS stuff and everything as well. Hugo and I talked about that, and then we'll start having kind of normal releases, obviously still very much on the minor versions until like a much more larger major that comes down the pipe, and also that it's in accordance with the whole release cycle for binaries. For the workshop, we actually link people to artifacts so they can run it on different machines. These will now all be part of the releases that go out, and again, this will probably happen in kind of early mid-December, and you'll have releases. We already have a homebrew that's actually specific to the version that we use in the workshop, but that will get tied to downstream releases. So you have a homebrew. We have again binaries that you can install for all the different Linux architectures, so ARM. Versus x86, Windows ones as well, though they've been tested only within our CI, or you can use WSL, and then we'll probably have some more packages. We already have a Debian package and an RPM, and we'll probably start having like a Windows installer package or some other stuff that will be hitting down the pipe for kind of the releases, because the idea is that this can run everywhere. So we should be able to people should be able to run it on every almost every platform. Obviously there's caveats to this. But yeah, so that's been a big, and NPM as well, which you guys have been working on, and we'll be also putting that as part of the release cycle, as we're kind of cleaning that up over the next couple of sprints. So I think for people who want to sign up or start playing around with it, with the docs and everything coming down the pipe, we're essentially officially kind of early version release for people to kind of work with stuff. And what's kind of been hit on with Everywhere Computer, with Homestar, and everything, and the separation in terms is that we have kind of these different personas that we've looked at, right? People who want to write WASM, we'll have actually some more stuff down the pipe for that, between what Hugo's been working on, and also probably some templated stuff for people who want to write WASM on the Rust side, that's integrated with WIT. We'll be doing essentially, you have people who want to write functions, people who want to use them and run them, and people who want to run that compute, right? These kind of three different personas that we've been looking at, and that's kind of the extent to all the work that we've been doing in the space, I would say. So that's our big update, inching forward and really making this stuff real. I don't know if anyone has any questions before we kind of move into like what are other people thinking or maneuvering in around the IPVM space. Or any general IPVM questions, we can also take that at this juncture. Cool. All right. Anyone have anything else? I think we put all the links in to share to ramp up. Cool. Yeah, I mean, one thing as well, and I've had a couple meetings with people who, we're obviously always looking for contributions. If you want to learn Rust, we had a couple of people on the Rust side. Obviously now the NPM and TypeScript stuff is opening up, and we're putting issues down. Cool. Yeah, running a node. Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing, running it, seeing what you run into. We obviously are very aware of things like we're going to have to deal with Naturversal. That's something that's also on our upcoming list. We'll be working with some stuff, I guess you mentioned in our space of Fission. We'll probably have move toward early next year having or even later this year a cloud node that will be running some Homestars that can be bootstrapped. We're in the midst of testing a lot of those things out right now, and so that can kind of help with getting getting some real networking going instead of being on a node by yourself. Computation is more fun with friends, as they say. Just made that up. Oh, cool. Now, yeah. Which is it? University? I guess
boot camp. It's a boot camp. Lighthouse Labs.
Oh, cool.
Canada.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that would be really cool. Obviously I can see really nice tie-ins for people who also want to learn how to write like basic WASM functions, kind of tied into all this. I just saw a survey that JetBrains put out with their kind of release of their Rust IDE alpha beta, where the survey was talking about how like in the Rust space in particular, how much WASM has been a part of like what people are kind of getting into Rust for from 2022 to 2023, and it went from 2022 being like a couple percent to like 20-something% in the 2023 one. This is basically like use cases for Rust, right? So some of it was WASM, obviously like networking, web services, whatnot. So you're starting to see that terrain. I think it's a really good kind of way for people to kind of get into Rust as well, with the tooling and stuff that has been coming out. And I think one thing is, even though this is IPVM and not like WASM, but there's a major tie into WASM for everything we're doing. And, it seems like with all the work that we're seeing from other companies and the stuff we're seeing with componentized JS, componentized Python as well, that the things are getting pretty close to like make it easier for people to work with the WASM component model and run this stuff. Like we're testing it out like live, and it's, you know, there's some warts, but it's getting better and better. And you know, I'm kind of happy with the WASM time, you know, jump and payoff so far. So I think there's a lot there. Cool.
Just to add one other thing, for anyone wanting to try Homestar and build up some workflows, the JS client also has some helpers in there that helps like building up the workflow definition, especially when you're dealing with dependencies where one task depends on the other. Sometimes it's difficult. You need to build up the CID of the first one and then wait for that CID. So there's some helpers there that automatically generate the CID and all the dependencies and output just JSON, normal JSON that you can pass straight in either through the client or through the CLI. So yeah, just something that makes
Yeah, it's
workflows simpler.
huge interface boost for sure. Model a little bit on some GitHub Actions kind of things that we talked about. Yeah, and the big recommendation, a big part of this work again on the kind of interface side has been, if you've seen the IPVM spec, it's not something that people just want to write configuration files in IPVM spec mode and have run. That's what runs internally. We've kind of called it the representation, the intermediate representation that we run in terms of Homestar, in terms of IPVM, as a compute engine. But what's great about like interfaces like that we've been building out, like Hugo's been working on, is we can make this abstract and generalized, and that's been the key. So if anyone wants to even look at building a different client interface, you get a different language. That's something to actually look at as well. We don't have all the cycles to do it for every language, but obviously we're geared toward kind of Rust and then JavaScript on the front end. But I think this gives us a lot of play for people who want to like, oh, I want to integrate Homestar with a Go front end or with a Python front end. Yet, that's right, always yet. I just need to copy, we just need like replicas of me, Brian, and Hugo a few times, and everything will be done.
We'll declare success when we have a DSL in COBOL, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say
then we'll have one
APL, but we can't even have the keyboard specific,
Yes.
the Homestar machine,
Has anyone seen the web server written in PostScript?
No.
I
Really?
don't think I have.
Really early on. I'll see if I can dig it up. Sorry.
Yep, I think that's cool. It's having a lot of languages. I mean, it's easier than it's easier for people to get on. I mean, obviously, like, so I'm in an HCI class, and everybody does Python. They've never heard of another language. So we live in a world where these things are if we want to make Homestar a data science tool, you probably want a Python front end, or like somehow it's baked into R somehow. But I'm not sure how those things happen with that organization. Very cool. Anyone got anything else? I think that's most of it from our side. Yeah, if people want to play around with it, we're updating the Gitbook documentation. I mean the documentation that we have, and yeah, I think there'll be a lot more front facing stuff coming down the pipe. So to Mark's point, I will say the Python WASM, the Python componentized stuff actually is ahead of the JavaScript stuff, and it's actually been pretty good. We haven't had a chance to play with it. It's a great way for people to get involved. But it is something we'll be exploring. If no one else, gets there on the IPVM front, we'll be exploring it for sure. And I think that story is actually looking pretty good. It actually uses Rust with Pi03 a ton to make all this stuff work. But it's pretty cool. So there is a pretty good story. It's not I can't say it's a great story yet, but it's getting better. I think by next year at this time, it's gonna be, we'll be in a pretty good place. Hopefully, minus any OpenAI debacles and elsewhere.
Amazing. Well, we can keep it short and sweet this month. That's totally fine. As always, you all know how to get a hold of us between calls. So we're in both the UCAN Discord and obviously the Fission Discord as well. There's channels set up for that. And in the IPVM GitHub, if you have questions, you want to start a discussion, anything like that, we are pretty active in there, obviously. The discussions feature actually pretty great. So yeah, see you all next month. Unless anybody else has any final things, but I think we'll just keep this one short this time. Great.